I'll just jump in here while we're waiting for questions. A couple things Dan mentioned, one of which is the availability of intranasal in Canada. It is not a formulation that is available. It's not approved by Health Canada, and just as in the U.S., naloxone is a post-patent medicine, so very little incentive for pharma to offer other formulations in Canada. So regarding over-the-counter status, there's some interest in a variety of quarters in Canada, but it's really quite early days. But part of the hope is that as an over-the-counter medication with wider distribution, that other formulations might be made available. But important points that Dan mentioned, that the effectiveness of intranasal versus intramuscular. But of course, one of the upsides is for people who are not injecting, intranasal is a nice option. No police in Canada carry naloxone, and in fact, in many provinces, many paramedics are not qualified to administer naloxone. So it's a curious situation where laypersons in community can administer naloxone, but the attending paramedic may not be able to. It's a strange glitch for sure. Christine, are you seeing any questions on your side, or?
Yes, I am. I've got one from Bonnie and one from, one from Connie and one from Betty Lou. I'll open up the line to Connie. Go ahead, Connie.
Oh, hi. I'm just wondering if you could just reiterate the situation with the cost of naloxone and Hospira in the U.S. Just curious about where things are at the moment.
Well, I need to tell you that I would love to speak completely honestly about it, but we have in our contract with them I don't know if you want to call it a gag clause or whatnot, so I need to speak about it more generally. But the price of naloxone in the U.S., despite the fact that it's a 40-some-year-old medicine, and as Michael said, off patent for a long time, it went up. Right now it's up around 25-fold in price from what it was when we started. And part of that is the competition. Part of that is something I learned from Hospira, and that is they needed to increase the price of the average bill around 3 to 4% back in 2008. And as they thought how to do that, this is a place that is selling, is the sole manufacturer of naloxone. And they thought, well, of all the medicines we have, we can increase the price of everything 3 to 4%, or we can increase the price of something that probably has a pretty inelastic demand and is relatively small part of the average customer's purchase quite significantly, and that's what they decided to do. Now, for programs like ours that only purchase tens of thousands of doses of naloxone, this is a knife in the heart, especially as we're charities and we don't charge people for anything. This basically was the kiss of death. Everyone from our frontline rep to her supervisor to the head of marketing of naloxone to the head of PR for Hospira has been very appreciative of these distinctions and has helped us with preferential pricing. In order to get that, you have to buy directly from the manufacturer, because I'm guessing there's no way in hell that's going to extend to all secondary suppliers. But that was their corporate approach. You know, they are a corporation, a for-profit corporation, and they're beholden to their shareholders. But there's an ethics that they adhere to very well, and I hope that continues. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. I have a question from Betty Lou. Betty Lou, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'm the bereaved mom that's actually on the film Eyes Wide Open, and my question is, what was your biggest barrier? Was it stigma?
First of all, you did a great job in that film. Your compassion just leaps out.
Oh, thank you.
I thank you for that. You know, I think that stigma is an issue, but I think that, as you know all too well, the the contrast of experiences of overdose that's portrayed in Eyes Wide Open is really the issue. Death through overdose with opioids is completely unnecessary with this pure antidote being available. And once people get that, and associate it with the life-saving nature of it, and this was a simple medicine that has no downside, and it's just like injecting water if you do it in the wrong person, and the person doesn't need it, and at the very worst it causes some withdrawal. People are really dumbfounded as to why it's limited at all, and why, especially as Michael said, which is true in the U.S. too, there are some first responders that simply don't have it. So why does that exist? I think that exists because the institution involved. In fact, as it's our experience, our legislators had no trouble whatsoever making this more widely available once they were educated. So I have a feeling once you provide this education to people, and I'm talking just a couple minutes of the basics, the potential stigma, which I certainly share with you, is a huge issue in how we deal with drug use and drug users. But it doesn't seem to make a difference. People put life first generally.
Thanks. I guess my comment is that I guess it's twofold. Pete actually, I didn't say in the video because of somewhat of a gag order too. Pete actually died of his overdose in a psychiatric ward for over a period of 6 hours, the autopsy proved. So the nurses there could not even recognize an overdose, even with my warning, and then it was way too late afterwards to use it. So I'd like to see it co-prescribed so parents would have a chance to save their children who are at home. And I guess the other part of my comment is that because I work with bereaved families a lot, the list keeps going on and on and on of how many parents are finding their kids dead in their beds. And that messaging just doesn't seem to, I don't know how to get it out enough to make people give a damn.
Well, I think people care a great deal about their children, drug users or not. And the issue is, I guess, how do you intervene when sleep is potentially an obstructing variable in the overdose process? And the best I've been able to come up with, people similar to yourself here, is say use early in the day. Again, with that revolutionary kind of recovery or collaboration that happens, just a connection between a significant other and drug user, and engendering some honest communication. Do your heavier use earlier in the day when you'd be awake, so that it becomes quite clear when you've overdone it. If you do it later at night, the chance of obscuring sleep obscuring overdose experience, what you describe is a horrible experience, and I've heard all too often here as well. And I think medical people as well as lay people become much more cognizant of overdose, and the most critical factor in recognizing overdose, the lack of responsiveness to stimulation. One of the early things we dealt with is people waiting for cyanotic color change of skin, and that is way too late. The emphasis that we use in every program that I know of is on recognizing the overdose through lack of stimulation, to a sternal rub, to a lip rub with the knuckles, just a shake or a shout and asking somebody how they're doing. But if you can't wake somebody up, that's the moment of overdose you need to respond and inject naloxone. And that is the message we get across. If you have naloxone, all of a sudden it becomes an issue. If you're disempowered, such as the medical providers you mentioned, you may not even recognize that. You may be happy if someone's sleeping it off, but sleeping it off and dying are all too close, as we know, sadly, from what you're saying.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you, Betty Lou.